Hello everyone, Rob Guest from football.london here and welcome to the latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. As I said on Monday's podcast, Alasdair Gold would be joining us later in the week to reflect on the Liverpool game, and here he is.
Yes, just a random day off. It wasn't any kind of grand holiday, and I haven't actually listened to the last pod, so I don't know if Lee started moaning about me being off as he often does. Looks like in the comments, more people.
Your absence was mentioned at the start,
It was.
but that was it.
It was. To be honest, looking at the comments, looks like he got more people moaning about him than anything for his views on the potential handball against Newcastle. So. Yeah, I'm back. It was just the one day off, and a victory to talk about. Great stuff, and a really interesting game with kind of talking points, some terrific performances, some young players really stepping up to the plate, and a couple of senior ones as well. And well, I don't think you can ever say 1 foot in the final whatsoever with a 1-0 going to Anfield, but certainly gave themselves a good opportunity, at least, let's put it that way, to try to take something from the second leg.
Yeah, I think some Tottenham fans, quite rightly went into the game with a lot of nerves, given Liverpool had won 6-3 at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium just prior to Christmas. But Spurs fully deserved that win last night. 1-0 victory coming courtesy of Lucas Bergvall's goal. 5 minutes from the end, bit of a controversial one as well from a Liverpool perspective. They made the feelings known, and we will, go into that. But like you said, there's so many talking points to come from the game last night, and what a performance it was from Spurs, and just nice for us to have a victory to talk about for a change.
It is. They're such a weird team. I mean, when you look at the last 6 wins, they've beaten Man City, Aston Villa, Man City again, Southampton, Man United, and now Liverpool. It's like, what is that about? They've messed up in other games they really should have won, or there's other context to it and all of that. But the wins have been against, strong sides. And we know the issues United and City have had since, but at the time they were those results that were impressive results, kind of thing. But yeah, they played really well. Again, we can only stress a million times, as Postecoglou did, the threadbare nature, especially of the defence. The defence is such a makeshift defence right now, but they, I thought, did brilliantly. All 4 of them, and of course, the debutant goalkeeper that we're going to talk about in Antonin Kinsky, and still missing other players in Maddison and Sarr being suspended, and of course all of the other injured and ill players and the like. And then there was a Rodrigo Bentancur moment early on in the game, which was another thing they had to kind of show real calmness, despite it being quite a distressing moment at the time.
Yeah, just Tottenham's luck, the way it's going at the moment. 5 minutes into the contest, Spurs having a corner, Pedro Porro swinging it in, Bentancur with a stooping header trying to get his head on the ball. It just looked, looking at the replays, like he swung his head so fast that he just hit it on the deck, and he was just laying there face down, motionless. Luckily, Pedro Porro saw what happened, instantly sprinted over to him, and then the rest of the players clocked what actually happened, and everyone went over to him. But I think at that time, all eyes were on the ball because Radu Dragusin had a chance on goal that Alisson saved. But yeah, really worrying scenes involving Bentancur, and I mean, he was getting treatment for around 10 minutes or so, left the pitch on a stretcher. Not nice to see at all. And I mean, these past 2 years for Bentancur have been horrendous in terms of the injuries. And I was looking back at the minutes he's played this season. It's been so stop-start, especially when you considered the suspension. But he also had the head injury at Leicester on the opening day of the season. That meant he missed out against Everton, I think, the following weekend. But yeah, fingers crossed it will, it'll make a swift recovery. There was a bit of an update from Spurs at half-time yesterday. Then Bentancur on his Instagram on the stories uploaded a picture of him sat up on the hospital bed, looking well considering what happened. But yeah, just not what you want to see at all.
It was so weird. None of us really knew what happened in the exact moment, because we're trying to think like, was there with a clash of heads, something like that. I even kind of asked you to double check. Was there anything we missed there that maybe there was a bang and there wasn't? And when you kind of watch the replays, it's almost like he kind of gives himself whiplash in the moment. He bangs his head so hard into the ground and whips around so much. It's like his arm and shoulder fly up as well as he does it. But I mean, Postecoglou confirmed afterwards it was a head injury, which I know this sounds weird, but kind of feel is a good thing, especially with a lot of the worst case scenarios that people were immediately jumping to across social media. But we'll see. Obviously, he's saying he's absolutely fine. We'll get an update from Postecoglou tomorrow at the press conference at Hotspur Way. Massive credit to Pedro Porro, who not only waved to people to come on quickly, but ran over, and it looked like he put him in the recovery position as well because he was face down. So fair play there. That was fantastic. And only judging on body language from the other players, I would say that after the initial kind of worry and calling people over, actually while he was getting treatment, they didn't seem too distressed. I think that was the fact that we've seen he was up and pointing at one point, and he seemed to be kind of conscious at the time. So maybe that kind of quelled any initial fears in that respect. But just really do feel for him in that respect. He's having, as you said, the head injury at Leicester, now this one. We know, of course, about the injuries in the past, the cruciate ligament, the ankle problem as well, the Matthew Cash tackle, and he's had very little luck when it comes to injuries, and hopefully it wasn't a concussion sub, which is another interesting thing. And whether that means anything at all, I don't know. Whether it's a strange one. You would think there'd be some element if he'd gone to hospital and needed to be observed and checked that there'd surely be some kind of concussion involved. I don't know. It's such an odd one, that. But like I say, we'll find out more tomorrow. Again, we end up going into the speculation side of things, which is ultimately pointless when we're hopefully going to get the proper information tomorrow. But all in, a moment that Spurs once again had to kind of regather, regroup themselves, and get on with the game against the league's best team. It's just the worst thing that could kind of, or certainly one of the worst things they could have had to deal with, is losing a senior influential player in the midfield after 5 minutes.
And I mean, this is a game, against Liverpool when Postecoglou was limited in terms of his midfield options. Anyway, he was asked pre-match about, I think, Bentancur and Bissouma coming back in, and he basically explained, well, I've only got 3 midfielders. That's why the start. And this is the situation we're in. But Maddison, Pat Matasara are going to be available once again after serving the suspension. So there's certainly options there if Bentancur is to face a spell on the sidelines. In terms of the other end of the pitch, we got to saw Antonin Kinsky make his full Spurs debut. I think a lot were probably expecting maybe Brandon Austin to carry on in there, but once Kinsky was training with the team, I think it probably came a bit obvious that he was going to be thrown in, especially when Ange was speaking in his pre-match press conference on Tuesday and hinted at it. And really, really impressive debut. I think everyone's probably been watching the videos of Kinsky during his time at Slavia Prague to see how good he is in terms of his shot stopping, but also in terms of the quality with the ball at his feet and his confidence. And that was on display throughout. There were a couple of times making the short passes. Then there's one occasion in the first half, really good long pass over the top, what saw Son and Solanke link up. Ange Postecoglou applauded him for that. And then there was another moment with probably about 5 or 6 minutes left when, again, he played a long ball over the top. And although no one got on the end of it, I think Ange, was happy with his intentions, even though they didn't come off, trying to do the right thing. And then once again applauded him. But there was a couple of moments definitely where he showed his confidence on the ball. And one of those was chipping the ball over Diogo Jota, just on the edge of his own area and then catching it in his hands. But in terms of the saves, there was a bit of a scare in the first half where he fumbled Gakpo's effort from distance, managed to get it at the second time of asking, but produced a couple of really good saves from Darwin Núñez after the break. But all in all, what a debut for him.
Yeah. Well, Clive Allen said after the game, I saw on Spurs Play, say it's one of the best debuts he can remember at that, at Spurs. And I kind of agree. Although it does show you the fine line of football, that moment with the Gakpo shot, had he not been as far in front of his goal as he was, and maybe that partly contributed to the fact that he didn't feel he needed to get 100% behind it, I don't know. But had he been on his goal line and that goes between his arms and behind him and over the line, it's, that kind of ruins there, and it kind of casts this whole other view on the performance just because of one moment.
That could have been a bit of a Taibbi moment.
Yeah, well,
Spurs fans, United keeper.
Yeah, Spurs fans had Eric Torsfeld on his debut. I think it was Nottingham Forest, maybe. He had a ball roll through and over the line as well. So, yeah, it can completely paint a different picture of a debut that actually was fantastic. It was a real sink or swim decision in a way, kind of throwing him in there, having that real trust in him. And he's a very assured, confident guy, and you can see that. And the entire defense, there were no nerves, were they? You could see it emanated across every other player around him. They knew that they could give him the ball in any situation. And yeah, there was a really nice parallel, I think, between a couple of efforts where he chipped it over Salah a couple of times, and you kind of cast your mind back to Forster trying to do that and hitting it straight at Salah. And yeah, just the way he used the ball, it was, like you said, short passes, long passes, little chip passes to Jed Spence on the left a few times as well. It was very, very good with the ball. And from what I understand, that comes about because his dad, the exactly same named Antonin Kinsky, had this, to be fair, a bit of foresight into what keepers would be required to do as his son was getting older. So he deliberately made his son play as a central midfielder when he was young. And that helped him kind of build up this confidence in. He's essentially almost looks like an outfield player that's also happens to be very good in goal. And that is because of that upbringing and the way he's done that, his dad, and making him use his left foot in training sessions as much as possible so that he can hit it with either foot. But then again, reflex-wise, I watched back the Darwin Núñez, the second effort, which is, I thought was like a header at the time. I didn't realise it's like a back flick. It's actually quite good play from the striker. And his reflex is to fling out an arm as quickly as possible. But then Núñez's first one as well, it's another reflex thing with his wrist, I think it was, he got to it. Yeah, brilliant debut. Really, really exciting as well. And we kind of reported this in the build-up to the match, that he's come in as a competitor for Vicario, not someone that's going to learn and be a backup. I mean, of course, he will learn because he's only 21. But the idea here is that he's come to play. And it was interesting. You saw Vicario give him a big hug after the game. He was down by the tunnel. But actually, those two are going to be going at it, I think, over the kind of months and seasons to come. And that's great. That's what Spurs probably haven't had, as far as I can remember, really. There's always been a distinct number one and a clear backup. Whereas now, I know it's one game, but you can see how kind of ready he is for this level. Look, it's going to be a tough one at the Emirates. He's going to get every trick in the book probably thrown at him from set pieces and things like that. So we're going to get to see a little bit more maybe of what he's like from set pieces. But certainly there's a hell of a goalkeeper in there as well. The Dragoshin moment when he kind of let that ball bounce through and Jota was running through, I'm not entirely sure whether... I don't know. I don't want to do him a disservice and say I think he was just trying to get his foot to the ball to do something with it, but managed to knock it up in the air and then claim it afterwards. I'd love to think it was a very clever little dink chip over Jota's head and then he was going to grab it, but it might be. But yeah, no, and he's speaks perfect English, seems to be really kind of settled in with the team already. You could see after the game having a good chat with a lot of them, laugh with them. He called Solanke over at one point and said something in Solanke's ear that made him laugh. I guess goalkeepers are normally quite strong characters, aren't they? So he's probably quite quickly in. I think it's 2 full sessions and 1 with Rob Birch, isn't it? He's found that he's got a new home, and it was lovely to see all the Slavia Prague stuff as well about him. Did you see all their Twitter account? They were all watching him and his performance, and they're so proud of him. And hopefully a long career to come at Tottenham.
Yeah, in his interview with Spurs Play after the game was also full of praise for Rob Birch and the work they'd done leading up to the game, basically filling him on the Premier League, the Carabao Cup, what to expect, how Spurs play, and came through it with flying colours. It was absolutely fantastic, and just really nice as well to see those post-match scenes after the game with his family in the crowd, hugging his sister, because he'd let them know the day before that there was a chance he was going to play, so they came straight over, and what a debut. What a evening as well, just to watch him play against the Premier League's best team at the moment and keep a clean sheet. And I know it's only one game, but 12.5 million could be quite a good deal in the long run if he continues to go from strength to strength. I know you said Arsenal will be a bit of a test for him. I think Tamworth might be as well if he's starting, but you'd think Brandon Austin will get the nod to start there, because Tamworth with Tommy Tonks with a long throw could be an interesting one for Spurs. But no, really, really good showing from Kinsky, and his opportunity to get a really good run of games under his belt before Vicario comes back. Obviously, won't be able to play in the Europa League games against Hoffenheim and Elfsborg because he's not registered.
Who would you play in those games?
I don't know. I think Austin maybe made a case now for a starting spot, but I mean, you can't discount the amount of games Forster played in Vicario's absence, and I think maybe Sunday's team selection against Tamworth might give an indication as to who starts, but it's just nice that there's a bit of choice in a position for once at Tottenham.
Yeah, I think my view on it, and it might be being brutal, I don't know, but you've got 3 goalkeepers now who have long-term contracts. You have 2 goalkeepers whose contracts end in the summer. And Brandon Austin is now not an untested keeper. He's had his chance. He came in and he played well against Newcastle. He did well. So my thinking, and this may not be the way Postecoglou sees it, but my thinking is you now give Austin the FA Cup game and the 2 European games and say, right, there you go. You're going to be our you're going to be there or thereabouts battling with these 2 other keepers over the years ahead. So here's your games for, I mean, it was so unfortunate. It was his birthday yesterday. He was back on the bench after playing really well on his Premier League debut. But yeah, I think, and Forster's done his bit for Spurs over the last couple of seasons or so, or 3 seasons, isn't it? I think, is it 3 or 4?
I think this is his 3rd season that he signed summer of 22.
Yeah, so he's done his bit, but I kind of feel like to play him in the European games would kind of suggest that you still don't entirely trust Brandon Austin. And it's playing a keeper who doesn't suit the system just for the sake of almost, he's more experienced. I don't know. I just kind of feel like Austin's done enough there in that one game just to have a chance, I think, to play these 3 games and set him up for the future as well, because he might have to come in next season. There may be an injury and an illness, and he might have to come in. So I think you've just got to keep topping up his experience whenever you can, really.
Yeah. You mentioned how confident the defence was with Kinsky behind them. We can talk about it now. All 4 of them, fantastic on the night. I think Jed Spence, another fantastic performance at left back, coming up against Mohamed Salah, someone who I think a lot of people view as the best player in the world right now. Posted some incredible numbers for Liverpool this season, but he barely had a kick down Liverpool's right flank. Wasn't really involved. I think he had one shot that drifted wide of the post in the first half. Another one where he took it off McAllister's feet and hit it wide. I think he teed up Nunes for that chance when Kinsky saved. But other than that, Salah wasn't as influential as a lot of people probably expected. I think that comes down to Jed just playing so well at left back. I wouldn't say it's an unfamiliar position for him now because he's played on the left more than he has on the right for Spurs. But even when he's in these tricky positions on the touchline, he's so confident on the ball, he'll happily turn into trouble and look for a way out. And he's just going from strength to strength. And once Destiny Udogie comes back, I don't think it's such an easy decision that Udogie comes straight back into the team if Spence carries on the way he's playing at the moment, because he's proven exactly why he probably should have been in the Spurs team, quite some time ago.
I think there's 2 Italians who are going to be rather worried right now. I really do think so, because I think Vicario's probably thinking, if he keeps playing like that, then I'm not automatically coming straight back in to get the gloves again and start. And I think the same with Udogie. Spence is playing so well there. And what I really liked about his game is that obviously he's a right back playing as a left back, yet Salah just couldn't really get past him down the touchline. And normally when fullbacks are on the wrong flank, that's the biggest issue for them, is they're kind of then a bit vulnerable on their left-hand side, let's say if they were right back on the left. But Salah just kept having to do the opposite and coming inside, which was actually benefiting Spence because he was able to then deal with that as well, naturally. And like you say, his confidence on the ball to receive it in kind of that touchline area where it can be really tight and he's being pressed, he would either dribble out of it or he played a couple of these really nice outside of the foot balls down the line to, I think it was one was Son, one was Solanke perhaps. And yeah, he's just doing so well. And it does make a little bit of a mockery, really, of Postecoglou not giving him his chance earlier in the season because, again, got to stress, we don't know what's happening in training sessions, things like that. And we know the numbers were tight for the European squad. So that was a decision between him and Forster, which obviously looks like you should have picked Spence. But then there was also a period where you looked like you really had to pick Forster because, you know, he was the only one fit and able to play in goal really as a senior keeper. But yeah, Jed's done so well. And Spurs look better with him in the team, which is a big compliment to him too, because Udogie wasn't having the greatest season this year. He hasn't really hit the heights that he did in some of last season. So yeah, it's it also kind of influences, I guess, how you look at whether they sign a left back. That's another thing as well, because if you asked me a couple of weeks ago, definitely I think they need a left back. And I still kind of do feel like they need a left back for next season, certainly. But they're in a position now where, you know, Jed is playing so well there. We got about 4 or 5 weeks left until Destiny's back as well. You've kind of got then 2 players that can play as a left back. You've got Archie Gray, who eventually won't have to be a centre back, and he can play on the right back with Porro. So you've kind of got a bit of cover right now. What do you think? What do you think they need to do in the left back situation?
I think I agree with you in terms of, if you asked me a couple of weeks ago, then it's a priority position after centre back, but you probably can get away with it dependent on injuries. I mean, there's also Ben Davies who can play there as well. Not his, although it is his natural position, it's probably not his role in Andrew's team, but certainly an option there. Archie's played at left back a couple of times, so yeah, they can maybe get away with it, but I think a lot of fans probably would like to see a left back come in, whether that is this month or it turns out to be January, because you know what Spurs looks like. Once the doggy's back, Spence will probably get injured or something like that.
Well, this is it. This is true.
Yeah.
I did actually ask Andrew about it. I just remembered the day before the game, didn't I, on Tuesday? And he said that it would have to be the right player. It'd have to be someone that absolutely fits the system, that they kind of really, it's a bit of a no-brainer. I think that was the way his answer was, if I'm remembering correctly. Because, yeah, and he listed, you know, Jed and Destiny, and Reguilon's obviously there at the moment as well. And Ben Davies can play there, albeit seems to be more of a centre-back now.
I wonder if you just keep Reggie on until the end of the season. No.
Depends what offer comes in, doesn't it? If you could get him off as a club, as from the financial side of things, I guess if you can get him off the wage bill for 6 months, as I know people don't like to hear the financial side of things, but you probably would still let him go. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe you still look for a loan deal there for another person. I don't know. But
yeah, because as I said before, I think for him financially, it's better to go in the summer just because there'll be more options. You're signing on fees bigger. But it doesn't appear to be someone at the moment like who's kicked up a fuss about not playing. Whenever you see him in these training footage or on the match day, he always has a smile on his face. He certainly was last night after the game, celebrating with everyone. And
yeah,
you'd imagine he does start at Tamworth on Sunday.
So. I mean,
so
he's
maybe
in control of his future, isn't he? Regardless, really, it's down to him.
It might be one of these that final few days of the window, because previously when it has moved, it has been the final week, really, going to Atleti, United. I think Brentford was that. I can't remember exactly when Brentford was, but I think the Atleti and United ones probably were towards the end of the window. So maybe a case of just have to wait and see.
and that'll be when all the kind of centre backs really will be back as well, and then you've got the likes of Archie, and can kind of be considered a fullback backup again as well. It's an interesting one, because I was thinking about this today. So we're going to go on to Archie Gray anyway, so it seems a good kind of time to discuss him. But the way he's playing right now, Archie Gray, let's say, just for one of the, let's go for Ben Davies. If Ben Davies comes back a little bit quicker, let's say, I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but who knows, it might be. If Ben Davies were to come back, would you take Archie Gray out of the back line for Ben Davies at the moment?
Probably not, because, I mean, look at the players. Archie Gray is Tottenham's future. Davies isn't. His contract's up at the end of the season. And the way he's playing, he deserves to be starting. I don't know whether once Romero and Van der Ven are back to fitness, you then look at maybe pushing Gray into the number 6 role in midfield. Possibly. But I think once Romero and Van der Ven are back, you really need to find a way of giving Gray the game time he deserves, because he's been absolutely outstanding. I think the biggest compliment they can play to him is, and everyone's pointed at him with being an 18-year-old midfielder who's playing at centre-back. But when you watch him play, you don't say he's an 18-year-old midfielder at centre-back.
No.
He looks like this player who's got the experience of someone 10 years older, and he looks like he's been playing at centre-back for a number of years.
Yeah,
he's been absolutely outstanding in recent weeks. Fantastic against Liverpool yesterday, and Radu Dragusin as well was really, really impressive. And I know everyone was critical of Tottenham in the transfer window not bringing in that experience, but because of the lack of the players now, Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall are making a really big impact in the team right now, and they can carry on doing that.
Absolutely. I was thinking about the exactly that, actually, the criticisms over that window. And yeah, look, we agree as well that they needed more senior players as well. So we're not kind of getting away from that. But I would say it'd be quite interesting for that recruitment team, really, looking at last night's match, when you think about it. And they're looking at a game where, who do we have? With Gray, Bergvall, Dragusin, all made an impact. Solanke made a big impact as well. I feel like there's someone else I'm forgetting really obvious.
Kinsky.
Oh, of course, Kinsky. Yeah, I knew it was someone really obvious. Yeah. So all of those players that they've kind of really pushed for to bring in all played against the best team right now that are going, and did really, really well. I asked Postecoglou about Gray after the game. He just done this like really long monologue about like the state of the game and referees and all that sort of stuff. And I was a bit like, ooh, this is such a different question. It was like it wasn't really a hard hitting question or anything like that. It was just like pretty much Archie Gray, hey, wow, every 3 days he's playing for you, and he's an 18-year-old central midfielder playing as a centre back. And his eyes lit up. He kind of got really excited like when I said the question, and he was like, yeah, and a position he's never played, mate. He's never played. An 18-year-old. Name me another Premier League team that's got 2 18-year-olds and one playing out of position consistently. I'm so happy that they're at our football club. And in 2 or 3 years' time, I just pray to God I'm the beneficiary of their talent, mate, because if someone else is getting it, I won't be happy. I love that. It was such a good answer. It kind of said so much in one answer. But Archie Gray, my word, there was a moment when he showed everyone what he's going to be like as a midfielder as well. That moment when he strode out of defence with the ball. I think a Liverpool player, I can't remember, Jota, someone tried to challenge him. He skipped around the challenge, kept on surging forward, and then played this just sublime outside of the foot pass between 2 or 3 Liverpool players and into Kulusevski's path as he ran down the right. It was just the confidence on him. And I know this is something Postecoglou's gone on and on and on about, so it's not something that I'm kind of coming out with any great insight at all. But through this tough time, through the tough results, players like Archie Gray are being forged. They really are. And I know he had his education at Leeds last season, but what he is learning in this couple of months is going to serve him just invaluably going forward. And we can see that. He looks confident. He looks comfortable. He's building a relationship with Radu Dragic as a centre-back partnership, which if we'd said that at the start of the season, we would have been laughed at that was going to potentially be something that happened. But also, I feel like he's developing himself to such a degree that, exactly like you said, I think when it comes to the centre-backs being back, I think he's going to start in midfield. I think Postecoglou will look at that and say, well, I trust you. You've done this for me. I can see what talent you've got. Why would I not start you in the midfield? And I think that's going to happen regularly.
Yeah, I think we've got to praise Radu Dragusin as well, who's, maybe not had the best of games in recent weeks, played well on occasion, some maybe not so, but he was fantastic last night. And just how key was that block on his own line from Trent Alexander-Arnold. I mean, he caught the ball really well, and that was heading for the net, and that was a key moment in the contest, because maybe if that had gone in, then it could be Liverpool with that advantage going into the second leg. But Dragusin, we've seen him in the cup this season. He's performed really well, and I think he does when you're coming up against like a quality team who are attacking and he has to defend. Maybe not the best player on the ball and with the ball at his feet, passing it, but in terms of defending, very good player.
Yeah, he's still only 22. This is when people kind of go at Dragusin and kind of have a moan about him. I just kind of feel like, I think maybe it's the fact that you've got two 18-year-olds that are doing so well. It may be kind of, I think people forget that's quite freakish. That's not usual. Someone like as a 22-year-old centre-back playing their first kind of real full season in the Premier League, that's still a young player. It's the 18-year-olds are that's just mad that they're doing it. And I really like Dragusin. I think his ability on the ball is actually quite mixed. He's got a bit of a Toby Alderweireld-esque quality to him, that he can ping a really nice pass if he wants to, but he can also hit another dreadful one. But he just defended so well. He had a couple of surges out of defence as well. One where he played it off and then kept running. And then there was another weird moment late on after Spurs had scored, when we were all kind of working out, wait a minute, who's that running right through the centre of the pitch? We realised it was Dragusin, and he was going into an almost centre-forward position. And you could see the bench a bit like, no, not now. Not now. You can do that at other points in the game, but not now. And he had to kind of run back. He did very well. I thought at one point he'd picked up an injury, which thankfully he didn't come off with. But he certainly is, he's thrown himself into anything, getting battered and bruised for the cause. And yeah, I thought he did really well. And what's quite interesting for the goal was that not long before, Postecoglou had a bit of a word with him about opening his body up and playing that pass to Porro to the right. Doesn't have to look inside, didn't have to do a crossfield, just look up, look at Porro and give him the ball down the flank. And he took that on board, did that in pretty much the next moment. Actually, I think it was 2 moments. I think he gave it to Porro, and then Porro hit it to Solanke for the VAR ruled out offside goal. But then he also did it for the one that led to the winning goal. So, yeah, he's taken everything he can on board, adapting, learning, and yeah, he's put in, like you say, a couple of big performances against big teams, and this was another one.
Yeah, Dragusin, really impressive. Something else which is very impressive, our sponsors, NordVPN. So, Alasdair, take us away.
Yes, NordVPN. I had a message from someone this week, actually, they come from Lithuania, a Spurs fan, and his child are coming over to watch an upcoming game, I think it is. And just within it, among all the stuff, they were just asking various questions, which sometimes people do, because obviously we're there week in, week out, so we kind of know ways to try and help people. But one of the things he said was that back in Lithuania, they use NordVPN because they're listening to the podcast. They got NordVPN, and it allows them to watch a lot of stuff from over here in Lithuania. And I just thought that was absolutely fascinating, that kind of, you don't think about it like this. I think each week I talk about it as being this thing that us from the UK can go abroad and use it, switch our device to thinking it's in a foreign country and still get everything back from the UK. I hadn't really thought about it, that actually people from other parts of the world could do the exact opposite of that, or kind of the same, I guess, and watch stuff from the UK. So yeah, that was very cool. And we do get messages like that. People get it because of hearing us talking about this every week, and it makes them get it, and they don't look back. And it is something that's helped them as well. So that's great. It does kind of makes it feel more more than just us promoting a sponsor of our podcast, it actually shows that we're helping people. So that's very cool as well. And yes, of course, in case you're not aware, as I always say, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. And on top of all of that, if you're thinking of, you might be wanting to watch something from Lithuania, or you might be a Lithuanian wanting to watch something from the UK, or you could be from the UK or anywhere in the world. Gold Guest Talk Tottenham have got a great discount for you all, which is if you go to nordvpn.com/goldguest, our link gives you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And in case you missed that link, the URL is in the podcast episode description box.
Let's talk about Tottenham's midfield now, because Ange had to rejig things about with Bentancur going off, Brennan Johnson coming on, Decky moving back into the number 10 role with Bergvall and Yves Bissouma in the midfield. I know Bergvall's obviously quite rightly dominating the headlines given his goal and the controversy surrounding his goal from a Liverpool perspective, but I thought Yves Bissouma, someone who went under the radar last night when the likes of Kinsky, Spence, Bergvall and Gray dominated the headlines. I thought it was fantastic. Just, giving those ahead of him a platform to, go on and try and trouble Liverpool, which is exactly what they did. And it's not been easy for Bissouma in recent weeks because he's just been in and out of the team. I thought it was really good when he came off the bench against Newcastle, just giving Spurs a bit more energy in midfield when Ange brought those experienced players on. And it was very much like he carried on from where he left off at the weekend. And he was coming up against a really strong Liverpool midfield as well, the same who started the previous game against Manchester United. Probably expected Arne Slot to make a couple of changes in the Carabao Cup as he has done in the competition so far. But in terms of their midfield and attack, they were very strong, starting Salah, Gravenberch, McAllister. But Bissouma, brilliant. Someone who, perhaps deserves a bit more praise for his performance and hopefully a sign of things to come.
Yeah, he got that yellow card in 32 minutes, and you're kind of thinking, oh no, here we go, kind of thing. But actually, he was incredibly disciplined after that. And like you say, the change in the midfield meant that he had to take kind of a big brunt of the work, the defensive work. Something that maybe, I don't know if people have noticed in recent games, is that for all this, Postecoglou never changes, Postecoglou doesn't do this or that, he has actually tweaked the midfield. It feels more like a 2 holding midfielders with a 10 in front of them rather than a 3 across or a 2 in front of a 1. And I kind of felt like even afterwards, after Bentancur went off, that kind of, it became Bergvall was alongside Bissouma, although his we'll talk about Bergvall in a minute, his energy levels were just ridiculous. But yeah, I thought Bissouma was excellent. I got some stats for you because I had to look it up because I thought he did loads. And he made what was a remarkable 18 defensive actions during the game. The next couple of people that got anywhere near that, they weren't anywhere near that, were 9 defensive actions, and that was Van Dijk and Spence both got 9. Bissouma had 18, which was made up of 6 interceptions, 4 ball recoveries, 6 clearances, 2 headed clearances, and 1 block. And he also made 4 passes into the final third as well. He was trying to make things happen. So, yes, absolutely spot on. It was a brilliant performance from him. And yeah, more of that, please. That's the thing for him, isn't it? It's consistency. It's being able to do that against every side regardless. And yeah, just keeping that discipline, such a key thing with him, because it's kind of the one thing that's really let him down over the last couple of seasons. And I just thought he was one of a couple of senior players that really stood up yesterday. And long may it continue.
One of the youngsters who stood up and certainly very influential in the game, Lucas Bergvall. He's just growing in stature game by game at the moment. He's just having more of an influence on proceedings. And I think you did the interview with someone from Bojacana, or whatever they were called.
From a Poicana, Peter Kisfaludi, yeah.
Yeah, and he said at the time it'd take him probably about 5 or 6 months to adapt to life in England and the Premier League, and then you'll see him, starting to get towards his best. And I think that's been the case probably ever since that Galatasaray game. Maybe a bit of a learning curve for him, throwing such a young lad into a pressurized situation. You know what the support is like at Galatasaray, a really hostile atmosphere, and didn't have the best of games. But when he's been coming off the bench since then, he's been really impressive. Outstanding at Southampton when he started, really good against Newcastle, and then he just followed it up again with another top display.
Yeah, and a full kind of, 97, 98 minutes of it as well. That's the other thing, is that his fitness and stamina has come on leaps and bounds. We've seen games where he's looked tired in that second half, and even against Newcastle, I know people are upset he came off, but he started to look tired. But here we are, 4 or 5 days on, and he, in the 86th minute, is making a pitch long run to go and knock in the winner from Solanke's pass, and he was excellent. I mean, that one tackle aside that we're going to talk about, his discipline, I thought, was really good in staying in certain positions and tactically having to adjust to having been the advanced midfielder to suddenly being alongside Basuma that little bit more when Kulusevski had to step back into the midfield. He's so comfortable and confident on the ball, which is just, you can give him the ball in any situation, and he's got a little, like the best players do, they have this radar of the pitch and they know where everyone is, and he can turn or twist, or he can pass the ball straight out. He moves the ball really quickly, and he's going to be just an incredible player. And I still don't entirely know, which is a good thing, I think, where his position in the midfield will be, whether he'll be a 6 or an 8. And I've seen him play as a 10, and he's as good as a 10 as well back in Sweden. So, he's just a terrific player, and I'm fascinated to see how his interview style evolves as well, because I've interviewed him twice now. I interviewed him in Sweden, where he was very comfortable and confident in his own environment, and he gave these really good, quite long answers. I interviewed him again on the preseason tour, and he was very much the new guy, kind of a little bit wary. And even though we'd spoken before, his answers are quite short and sharp and things like that. And I've noticed his Spurs play interviews, he's got this habit, which he did in both of those interviews, where he'll start to talk and then he'll get to the end of the answer. And maybe this is just a thing all teenagers do. He goes to the end of the answer, he goes, yes, and that's it. He just kind of mumbles like the end of the other, and it's like, yeah, I'm finished now. And you just imagine that, with that's just the last bit for him to probably be comfortable with being a bit of a star, because he's going to have to do a lot of interviews over the years to come. He's got some talent, and to get your first goal for Tottenham Hotspur in front of the South Stand against Liverpool, perfect knee slide as well. Got to give him for the celebration. What a great slide. And brilliant day for him, but one also tinged with controversy.
I think Liverpool have made it pretty clear that they thought he should have been sent off for that tackle on Tsimikas. This was after receiving a booking not long before for a tackle on Luis Diaz, but looking at the replays, didn't touch the Colombian, did he? So probably shouldn't have been booked for that. But
was
when
he
you look,
blocking his path? How does that work?
I don't know.
He had to hurdle him. Yeah, it's a difficult one. It was a harsh one.
Yeah, but for the tackle on Tsimikas, if you're looking at it, it's a yellow card. He gets him. So if he's already been booked, then technically he should be sent off. But that wasn't the case. And what actually happened was when Bergvall scored, Tsimikas was still on the sidelines with that injury. So you can understand why Liverpool are not happy with the decision. But terrific finish from Bergvall, just making that brilliant run into the box. But I thought the hold-up play from Solanke was fantastic, just to, pressurize Konate, who is a really powerful defender, knock him off his feet a bit, get the ball and then lay it off so precisely to Bergvall, who finished it well, and not a chance Alisson was saving that one.
No, that was a great finish. It was really nice finish into the bottom corner. And there's different ways of looking at it. as in the challenge. If you're a Spurs fan, let's be honest, you'd be raging about that. That was it was a challenge worthy of a second yellow card. But then there's a whole other area we go into, and I feel like the managers got themselves a little bit bogged down by this after the game. Of this, there's Postecoglou was going about this rule that says that I've got some of the wording here. Essentially, if the referee plays the advantage for an offence for which a caution or sending off would have been issued had play stopped, this caution sending off must be issued when the ball is next out of play. However, if the offence was denying the opposing team an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, the player is cautioned for unsporting behaviour. If the offence was interfering with or stopping a promising attack, the player is not cautioned. So that's what I think Postecoglou was looking at. And apparently this is, I think, maybe what the fourth official was telling them. I think that's certainly seemed to be what Slot was saying as well. But there is, again, when it comes to the rules, they get muddied even further because the rules also say an advantage should not be applied in situations involving serious foul play, violent conduct, or a second cautionable offence unless there's a clear opportunity to score a goal, which there wasn't at that point. It's too deep in the pitch. However, there's another aspect to all of this, which I think is probably even more key to everything, is that Stuart Atwell, the referee, didn't play on. He didn't point to play on. He didn't put his hands out to say play on. He pointed to the ball as if he thought Bergvall got it or got a touch on it. That's the key thing here, because once he'd done that, the ball's still active. It's just a move. So when it comes to the end of that, and he hasn't seen what it was a foul, he then can't go back and say, "Oh yeah, maybe it was a foul." VAR can't intervene because it's a yellow card challenge. I don't believe that they can do that. I think they can only do it for a serious foul play incident or a red card. So I think it's more a mistake by Stuart Atwell and not realizing a foul was initially made. And that's the problem, rather than the whole rule thing, which I think is a bit of a misnomer because, yeah, he didn't actually play an advantage. Although the way it sounds like, and again, I'm putting words into mouths, but it sounds a bit like the way that the fourth official maybe explained it. Maybe he thought an advantage had been played, which when you watch it back, he appears to be clearly pointing at the ball rather than playing on or anything like that. So, yeah, either way, at the end of it all, you'd be very annoyed if it happened to your team. But it is just a mistake. And of course, it had to be Bergvall scoring the goal afterwards.
Yeah, I'm sure Liverpool will get somewhat going in the favour in the second leg at Anfield at the start of February. But yeah, just going back to goal, really well taken and fantastic from Solanke again, who was really unlucky not to have a goal himself because we had VAR in the semi-finals of the competition, having not had it before. And I mean, it was a fantastic ball from Pedro Porro to release him. Really well taken goal, but I think just watching from home, you just had this feeling that it was offside. And when you're looking at it on the screen, millimeters again, but it was offside. Then we had Stuart Atwell, the referee, telling everyone in the stadium that it was offside and explaining it. Something certainly new in Premier League and Carabao Cup games.
It was historic, very NFL, very that kind of mic on the side of their head telling everyone. And one thing I think I'm hoping they iron out is the blowing of the whistle. It's like you don't get that in NFL, and the reason is because it is so painful to your ears. Someone blowing a whistle into their microphone, everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, that's not going to happen again." But yeah, I guess it explains it in the moment if people need that. Postecoglou was very dismissive of it afterwards. He was like, "Really? Did everyone get really excited when he kind of explained what we all knew was going to be the case?" I think when it's offsides, it's a bit like, do you really need it? It's a bit cut and dried. If it's offside, all right, so he was over the line. That's it. I think it's more to do with moments like the handball decision, I suppose, last week against Newcastle and their goal standing. That's the kind of thing where maybe you'd benefit. Although, as Postecoglou would probably say, actually, I think he did say it. What would have been the reaction in the stadium had he explained that? Everyone would have booed. It would have probably made an even worse reaction. So, yeah, I'm kind of with him. I don't really care for all that stuff. It's a bit like it's just tinkering with the game more and more and more, isn't it? It's all a bit weird, but yeah. Solanke was brilliant again. Solanke was so good. Honestly, he has been one of the best signings for Spurs in years. And I don't think people realise even how good, because what he's doing right now, even with a lack of service at times, is just remarkable. He's, Spurs lost a massive, huge, era-defining player in Harry Kane, a player who is impossible to replicate because we've said it a million times over the years, he is a striker who is also a playmaker. He's a bit of everything. But what they've done in bringing Solanke is they've brought in a different player who has attributes that are perfect for this Postecoglou team. And also, I think underrated in a lot of what he does with the football as well. He works incredibly hard, and that's just the base foundation of his game. But actually, in terms of the way he dribbles with the ball, his eye for a pass, his movement, he's just fantastic. I mean, the ball into Bergvall, the way he looks up and plays it directly into his path is perfect. That could have been quite easily messed up and the chance is gone. And like you say with Konate, the strength to hold him off, a big, powerful player as well. Solanke for me is, I mean, what is he up to now? 17 goal involvements in 27 games. He is flying for his new club. But they've got to get the best out of him by not overplaying him. And that's going to be the key thing, I think, in the weeks ahead.
That's what I was just going to say. As well as he's playing, he definitely needs a rest at some point. And you'd imagine that comes on Sunday at Tamworth. Fingers crossed. You don't want him to be involved in that game at all, because if he is, then it's going pear-shaped for Spurs against Tamworth. But yeah, he's fantastic. It's just nice to see him, get the flowers that he deserves at the moment, because I saw on social media after the game, a lot of people were basically holding their hands up and saying, I didn't give you a chance when you signed. You're coming from Bournemouth. We didn't think you were good enough, basically, and you've proven us wrong. And fantastic player. Really, really impressed with him. I thought he always deserved the move, I think, from Bournemouth because of the form he was showing. But I didn't expect him to be this good at Tottenham. I thought he was going to be good, but it's really kicked on. And what's nice to see is I think when he left Chelsea, it was maybe under a bit of a cloud, because I think at the time there was talk of he'd made one senior appearance and his agent or whatever was asking for X amount of money for him to stay at the club. And you were probably thinking at the time, your career, might not go the way planned. But he's knuckled down, put in the work, and he's just continuing to go upwards at the moment on this upward trajectory. He's a fantastic player, and I think Ange and Spurs are so lucky to have him in the team.
Yeah, no, he's superb. He's fantastic. And I think a lot of those clubs are probably looking at him now, wondering why they didn't go for him. Because he's terrific player as well. But like I said, he needs help. They're going to have Richarlison back soon, hopefully. Another week of training, and then I think they're going to start involving him in matchday squads. But they also may be looking outside those doors of Tottenham Hotspur as well.
Yeah, Randal Kolo Muani is the player in the headlines at the moment. The PSG man. Not quite worked for him in France. Looks like he's gone to get a move this month. Spurs looking at adding attacking reinforcements. They've held discussions over signing him from PSG, potentially a loan deal with an option to buy. That's been mooted. Someone who has, forged quite a bit of a big reputation in Germany when he was at Eintracht Frankfurt. Almost won the World Cup for France in 2022. He was the one who had that opportunity through one goal in the last minute that Emi Martinez saved. And for someone who can play centrally across the front three, he could prove to be, a bit of a shrewd acquisition if Spurs can maybe get a deal over the line for him.
Yeah. I've gone down the rabbit hole of watching loads and loads of videos of him and trying to research, and he is perfect for the Postecoglou system. The way he can play anywhere across that front three. He's got pace, he's got strength, he can dribble past the player, he can knock a ball in from the wide angles like he loves, or he can cut inside and have a shot himself. It hasn't really worked for him at PSG. And there certainly seems to have been some discussions that have gone on, although I would also say there's a lot of clubs interested in him. So it's going to be if they can get a deal done for him, then it's certainly going to be one that is beating others to the punch, as it were. And also what the deal is going to look like. Is it going to be a loan with an option to buy? They only bought him 18 months ago or so for about 76 million, wasn't it, PSG? It was a massive fee. So they're not going to want to let him go for any on the cheap at all. But he would get a lot of minutes at Spurs if they were to be able to bring him in, because he's going to play, like I say, anywhere across that front three, really. You can just kind of pick and choose where you want to play him. And everyone will then be able to get a rest when required, and there'll be competition and push everyone on. So, yeah, we'll see with him. It's about, I guess, convincing him over other clubs and also striking the right deal. And yeah, there's been a few other names mentioned out there, haven't there, in terms of the attacking areas?
Yeah, Marcus Rashford, he's another one that he's been linked with the likes of Dortmund, Juventus, AC Milan. January exit from Manchester United does look likely, maybe a low move for him, because I can't imagine many clubs are going to have the money available maybe in January to buy him. He's, someone who has been linked with Spurs in the past. I think you put in your talking points earlier that there's currently, haven't been any discussions over the Manchester United striker, but his situation is one to watch for most clubs during the window. So that's maybe one that could happen for Rashford over the coming weeks, whether Spurs do make a move for him or he heads abroad. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes, because I think he does need a bit of a fresh start.
Yeah, certainly seems to be that is his agent his brother? I can't remember. His representatives, maybe his family, but he certainly seems to be being shopped around in a way in Italy at the moment. Various Serie A clubs looking at him. So yeah, I think he's one to watch in terms of the remainder of the window, purely because you see how desperate United become, if they do become desperate at all, and then what loan offer maybe comes up with him, and how much they subsidise his big wages. I don't know. But right now, yeah, someone that Spurs haven't had discussions over at this point. Just very quickly, I forgot, Postecoglou did kind of slip up slightly in his press conference on Tuesday, and he said about he used the expression with Solanke, and hopefully someone will be helping him out in the very near future. And he was asked, do you mean players coming back from injury, or do you mean new players? And he was like, yeah, both. He actually admitted that they are trying to sign. He said not a centre forward, but an attacker. And bearing in mind, he was asked, or the question contained Muani earlier in the press conference, and he didn't knock it down. It would kind of suggest that he's probably the main target, in that someone that can play across that front three, but also be a centre forward. So, yeah, he wants another body up top, and hopefully he'll get that sooner rather than later. Very quickly, one for you. Centre backs. Are we now at the point where we're getting towards midway through the month? They need another centre back right now to allow Radu Dragic and Archie Gray to get a rest. Otherwise, they're going to play every 3 days. But are they also in a scenario where you've got maybe 3 players that are coming back in the next couple of weeks, and you could end up having 5 centre backs, and a centre back who you're bringing in probably doesn't play another game for the rest of the season, or won't get many minutes?
I think Spurs are in the position where you bring a centre back in, whatever, even if you have 3 on the bench, it's better than having 2 midfielders or one centre back, 1 midfielder at centre back, because they've just been so short there in the position. And if you're going to be battling on 4 fronts in what remains of the season, you need to make sure you've got those options, because if not, then those goals you set at the start of the season might not become a reality. So I think they need a centre back.
I agree. I do agree. Absolutely. I just wonder whether it's a tougher sell. That's my only worry with it, is that when they see all the players coming back, and then what's the role for me? But I agree. I still think they need one.
Unless the other option, you just bring Ashley Phillips back from Stoke and then look for a new centre back in the summer.
Yeah, which seems a waste for him. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Right. Quickly, before we call it a day, Spurs FA Cup 3rd round action Sunday lunchtime at the Lamb Ground, playing National League side Tamworth. I mean, this is what the FA Cup's all about, going to a non-league side on an artificial surface as well, which should be interesting.
Mm.
Chance for Ange to rotate. You'd imagine the likes of Will Lancashire, maybe Callum Olasese, Mikey Moore could potentially get some minutes after returning to the squad. Alfie Dorrington,
Yep.
maybe Yang Min Hook as well. I think a few should be a bit of rotation. I think, like we've said, Solanke needs a rest. I think Decky desperately needs a rest as well.
Yeah, I think you've got to mix it. I think you can't go overboard in chucking everyone out. You've also got to be wary, like you said, of the 3G pitch and anyone that might be borderline risking a hamstring injury. You do not want them playing on a 3G pitch whatsoever. Otherwise, that is probably going to happen. Yeah, you need a couple of experienced head in there. You would think Maddison and Sarr come in because they haven't played. Probably would play Dragic in alongside Dorrington, maybe, just to give him that little bit of kind of a experience, or say relative experience alongside him. Maybe Reguilon comes in as well as a left back. And yeah, I don't think you kind of intersperse the young players there. With Yang, it could be the chance to do it. Mikey Moore might be a bit soon to start. I don't know. We'll see. But certainly it's one of those classic cup games, isn't it? It's on paper, it's a non-league team. You should be able to put out these players and not worry. But the magic of the cup, as it were, there's giant killings all over the place all the time. So you don't want to be that team that does that. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what he does.
Yeah, it should be a good occasion. Always is in the FA Cup, and an opportunity there for Spurs to get a result and put themselves in the hat for the fourth round of the competition. Right, we'll leave that there for today's latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham. Thank you as ever for listening in, and we'll be back next week. In the meantime, just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.